Hello, this is Vaishnavi Mishra and you are watching the Sabha. Today we have came up with different local, national and international news. So let's begin. Kolkata, the tally of coronavirus cases in West Bengal rises to around 2 lakh. The government has implemented different set of guidelines to prevent the spread of novel coronavirus in the state. On 14th of March, all the educational institutes were announced to be closed and they remain closed till now. On 29th of July 2020, the State Home Secretary Alpan Bandyopadhyay announced that there is going to be a complete lockdown for 2 days every week in the month of July. On 30th of March, West Bengal government issues order to authorities of every district to set up temporary arrangement of shelter and food to the migrant and poor. The West Bengal government on April 25 admitted that 57 COVID patients died but also said 39 from comorbidities after the IMCT-6 report. The government of the state also urged the central to postpone the exams of JEE NEET to avoid the spread of the coronavirus. Bihar undergo the state of lockdown on 22th of March 2020 when the first case was reported. The tally of Bihar coronavirus cases has raised to 176k. Ministry of Health and Family Welfare has classified the country's district in 3 different zones: red, orange and green, based on the severity of the outbreak in those areas. In late March, as migrant workers started returning to Bihar, the state government imposed mandatory 14 days quarantine at government relief camps. The government was involved in distribution of free food and sending money to the bank accounts of school children or their guardians, as reported by Indian Express. Bihar was one of the states got under the Central Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana for employment opportunities to rural workers and returning migrants. The central scheme will be launched in 6 states including Bihar on 20th of July 2020. But in many parts of Bihar, people are not satisfied with the government work. In an interview to the print, a villager Anandi Singh, resident of Govindi Chak village, said, "Our Pradhan has been helping us out, but he has got no support from the government. We can only hope that things will improve in the coming month." Similar sentiments has been expressed by people across many districts like Patna, Muzaffarpur and Siwan. The United Resident and Doctor Association India had claimed that over 83 resident doctors at Patna Nalanda Medical College who had been exposed to patients who later tested positive for coronavirus were suspected of being positive themselves. It further said that government and nurses weren't being provided with adequate personal protective equipment such as masks, gloves and sanitizer. Election Commission of India has announced the date of polling to be conducted in 3 phases, maintaining all the norms and measures to avoid the spread of virus. Maharashtra, total number of cases in the state is 1.32 million and death number around 32,000. Report by Ministry of Health and Welfare. The government reopened around 60,000 industries to combat the economic crisis. It allocated funds to different districts to combat the impact of coronavirus spread. On 29th of August, during launch of 816-bed COVID facility, CM Uddhav Thackeray said that for health machineries to reach patients with symptoms, first chase the virus policy will be executed across the state. While migrant workers were seen in trouble after the lockdown was announced in the state. After coronavirus lockdown was extended to May 3, some migrant laborers in Nagpur were seen cycling towards their home in Madhya Pradesh, while some others were seen going on foot on April 17. In an interview to ANI, they say, "I started my journey from Nasik 5 days ago and it will take another 6 days to reach my home." While speaking, once finalized, a decision to reopen restaurant will be taken, stated CM Uddhav Thackeray in a meeting with representative of Restaurant Business Association on 28th of September. Official from the State Education Department said, "The popular opinion seems to be against the physical reopening of the school anytime soon. With rising COVID-19 cases in state, there seem to be a lot of risks involved in reopening of school. However, the government decision is awaited." The official added that the plan to reopen schools only post-Diwali break is being considered. The country registered its first case in the month of March. Since then, the country is experiencing lockdown. The spread of virus was marked low at the end of the month of March, but in April a steep rise was observed. Soon Bangladesh suppressed China, and in Southeast Asia it became the second most affected country after India. It had successfully evacuated Bangladeshi citizens from China by late January and quarantined and reintegrated them. The government announced the closure of all schools and other educational institutes in the country on March 17, following the outbreak of the novel coronavirus. The government has extended the shutdown of the school and other educational institute until October 3 to be continued surge in the number of coronavirus cases across the country. The government ordered to shut down offices, workplace and transport services while came into effect on 29th of March, and after 66 days lockdown all were reopened on 31st of May. Once the lockdown went into effect, a 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. restriction was imposed, especially in dense urban areas. The number of coronavirus cases in the country has reached a tally over 3 lakh. Talking about coronavirus and its spread, it's now kind of mandatory to include China, as Wuhan, the city in China, is considered to be epicenter of novel coronavirus. Earlier, American President remarked in China and WHO calling out coronavirus as China virus created a lot of controversy, whereas China is being ridiculed by different developed and underdeveloped countries for the pandemic and cases. Coronavirus spread in China once made it top list the most affected country, although with time the graph observed a step down in the coronavirus cases. But time to time the country has been hit with another wave of COVID-19. Few weeks earlier, China again made it global attention when a Chinese virologist Li Mengyan claiming shocking fact about coronavirus spread in the world that virus originated and spread from China's lab on purpose. This created a stir in global perspective. Now China has been charged with claim that it treated thousands of patients infected with virus without proper trial and unproven vaccine that has risked life of many. WHO praised Africa on the country's response and worked towards the spread of coronavirus, as the continent is observed with decline in the cases of COVID-19 infection rate. The number of coronavirus cases has reached 1.4 million, which has resulted in loss of many lives. During a press briefing, Matshidiso Moiti, WHO African Region Director, said that the government quickly implemented restriction on gatherings and movement that resulted in less spread of virus. Egypt becomes the first country to report the coronavirus cases in continent. Algeria reported its first case on 28th of February. The worst affected, South Africa, with highest number of cases around 66,000, is now easy restriction and going back to normal after the decline in cases. President Cyril Ramaphosa first addressed the nation of COVID-19 on 15th of March, declaring a national state of disaster in terms of Disaster Management Act. In his second address on 23rd March, the president announced a national lockdown initially for 21 days and outlined more stringent interventions. On 21st April, the president announced that a social economic support package of Rs 500 million had been finalized, amounting to approximately 10% of GDP. President Cyril Ramaphosa joins SG Antonio Guterres, PM Justin Trudeau, PM Andrew Holness, JM, and other world leaders to discuss financing the sustainable development goals in the era of COVID-19 and beyond on 29th of September. In United Nations General Assembly, Africa has asked the world leaders to come forward and provide the continent with financial aid to overcome the impact of COVID. In New Zealand, the government, in response to global COVID-19 pandemic, implemented restriction on gathering and movement of citizens. The Ministry of Health set up National Health Coordination Center on January 28 in response to the global threat of COVID-19. The first case of disease in New Zealand was reported on 28th of February 2020. As of September 29, 2020, the country has had a total case of 1,835. All borders and entry ports of New Zealand were closed to all non-residents on 19th March 2020, with returning citizens and residents being required to self-isolate. Since 10 April, all the New Zealanders returning from overseas must go into 2 weeks of managed isolation, while the government asked universities to exempt Chinese students travelling to study in New Zealand. Many other travelling restrictions were imposed and social distancing was strictly practiced in the country. Fourth-level alert level system introduced on 21st of March to outbreak within the country. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardrena announced that New Zealand and Australian government would be cancelling Anzac Day service scheduled to be held at Gallipoli in Turkey in response to travel restriction and coronavirus outbreak. With a total number of 1,833, New Zealand becomes one of the least affected countries in world, but time to time 2 or 3 cases registers in the country, though the country has recently eased use of masks. Indian central government blunt denial of records of death of migrant and health professional shows who are insensitive people leading to the government may be seen chosen by insensitive citizens. Our government need to learn from New Zealand's prompt and sensitive approach. The elected Prime Minister Jacinda Ardrena had declared that she is agnostic and had taken sensitive action towards dealing with religious matter by state, while the male and religious-centric government in India, including the media, were busy in blaming Muslim community and superstitious media showing Kala Jadoo, witching hunting of Riyas.